Hello. For the first time in over a year, a classic EP revisited. A record catching its creators on the cusp of their greatest achievement. From 1983, this is Buzz or Howl, Under the Influence of Heat, by Minutemen. Buzz or Howl came out in November of '83, the band's second release of the year following January's breakthrough album, What Makes a Man Start Fires, and only 8 months out from the following summer's Double Nickels on the Dime. And is that record rightly considered the Minutemen's defining release, which gets all the love nowadays, regularly appearing on critics' lists and retrospective rankings. Even the band's bass player, songwriter, and occasional vocalist Mike Watt considers Double Nickels, and I quote, the best album he ever played on. Nonetheless, I'm here today to sing the praises of Buzz or Howl as the last stop on that journey towards Double Nickels, as a wonderfully concise summation of the Minutemen's extraordinary evolution to that point in time. Their credo, we jam ECONO, working day jobs, loading their own gear in and out, working with what you got, rehearsing till you're tight enough to record in a single take, using old tape, just not sweating all the rock star bullshit. The concept of ECONO extended to runtime as well. Their songs were typically short, compact spiels. So in that spirit, I return to an old video concept of mine. This is the history of Minutemen in a minute. In a minute. Clock please, right. Mike Watt and D. Boone met in 1970, aged 13 in San Pedro, California, and bonding over a love of music, were encouraged by Boone's mom to play together, D on guitar, Watt on bass. Into Creedence, Blue Oyster Cult, T-Rex, they played in school cover bands until an overnight conversion to punk rock in 1976. They began writing original songs, going to punk shows, and within a year were the Reactionaries alongside George Hurley on drums and singer Martin Tamburovich. A Clash concert in Santa Monica, 1979, led to a meeting with Black Flag and a support gig in their hometown, a show marked by enough crowd violence to force the Reactionaries to split and inspire Mike and Dee to form the three-piece Minutemen, with at first Frank Tonchi and then former Reactionary George Hurley back on drums. Greg Ginn recorded their debut EP Paranoid Time in 1980, a striking release in hardcore circles, and their debut album The Punchline coming in 1981. 3 more albums and 2 EPs followed, all on SST Records, but tragedy struck in 1985 following a high-profile tour support with REM. D. Boone, still only 27, died in a freak van accident a few days before Christmas of that year, and the Minutemen were no more. And that's about a minute. For scale, it's 40 years since D. Boone's passing, but here we are, still talking about them, so let's not waste time. It's very easy to get lost in the long grass of the mythology and history of the Minutemen, so in an attempt to keep us focused on Buzz or Howl, I'll break it down via some key themes and concepts. First up, we've already mentioned it, that's ECONO. This being essentially a stopgap EP between albums during a year of pretty heavy touring, including the band's first European tour with Black Flag. It was recorded extremely cheaply. Ethan James, ex of Blue Cheer, was putting together a compilation of LA area bands to promote his tiny Radio Tokyo studio in Venice, California. And he approached the Minutemen looking for a track. He offered to record the band for free, and they asked if he'd keep the tapes rolling and let them record one more song. As Watt tells it, that one more song was actually 3 songs recorded quickfire with short gaps between them. In other words, 3 tracks at no extra cost. ECONO. The compilation, the Radio Tokyo tapes, got the first recorded version of Buzz or Howl's I Felt Like a Gringo. A little slower and a little cleaner than the EP version. There's a link to it above. But the EP got self-referenced, cut, and Dream told by Moto. It was just a win-win for everyone concerned. The remainder of the EP's tracks were recorded by Spot, SST's in-house engineer, over 2 short sessions in January and May of 1983. The band, forever looking to trim the fat, had asked Spot to cut to 4-track tape rather than 16. Instead, Spot suggested, well, why not record live to 2-track? No overdubs, no fuss, $50. Which is what they did. The result, an 8-track, 12-inch EP for half a yard. A colour image from National Geographic that was earmarked for the EP's sleeve was shelved as just being too expensive, with Joe Bizer's black and white ink piece, this behind me, of a feuding D and what used in its place. Okay, theme 2, that's SPIEL, the words and the lyrics. Think of the definition of SPIEL, a wordy speech deployed to sell something or convince you of a proposition. The word coming from the German verb spielen, meaning to play. It's a word that really cuts to the heart of what the Minutemen were about. Playful, unencumbered, always mixing things up. Happy to set puzzles too, inviting the listener to engage with their own ideas and viewpoints. Also, SPIEL as a kind of sales pitch. Well, Mike and Dee were constantly reflecting on their own revelations, eager to share, to teach maybe, and committed to a kind of blue-collar bohemianism, empowering working people to create, to participate, to express themselves. And a couple of throwaway jam tracks aside, that's Dreams Are Free, Motherfucker, and The Toe Jam, the lyrics, the title even of Buzz or Howl fit squarely into this mould. Their autodidacticism, Dee's love of history, of art, Watt's embracing of jazz, free music, beat writing, made them and George sponges, absorbing phrases, ideas, concepts from all over. The EP's title, for starters, is drawn from an article in the February 1983 edition of Scientific American. Here it is, in fact. You should see it now. Retrieved and scanned from a dusty corner of my old employer's journal library. It's Thermal Oscillators, Systems That Seesaw, Buzz, or Howl Under the Influence of Heat by Jill Walker. These lyrics tend more towards the overtly political or philosophical, and here, the product boils down the idea that life within a capitalist society has conditioned us to view everything, even the works of art that we create, as product, a thing that only exists to be sold, its inherent value immaterial. This song has a fiercely reductive, haiku-like simplicity that bottles this dilemma in just 2 or 3 lines of prose. Mike bends more abstract, more beat poet, always writing himself, his experiences into the middle of a treatise or premise. On self-reference, for instance, he writes, "How can I believe in books when my heart lies to me? I'm full of shit." Or in I Felt Like a Gringo, a more self-consciously autobiographical lyric stemming from the same 4th of July trip to Mexico that inspired maybe their most well-known song. That's Double Nickel's Jackass theme, Corona. In this one, Watt writes, "A ton of white boy guilt, that's my problem. Obstacle to joy? One reason to use some drugs." There's almost nothing of punks, of hardcores, nihilism or angst in a Minutemen lyric. The socialist, Marxist ideals that underpin their worldview are light years from the colder, more analytical takes of a band like Gang of Four, for instance. They sing like revolutionary soldiers, fitting theory and structure into their everyday experience, weaponizing the fight by grounding it in a reality that their peers could relate to. And Buzz or Howl has a lot of that to it, with their musical community, tourmates and compadres, Black Flag in this case, featuring heavily throughout. Watt's song Cut is about Greg Ginn's guitar sound. The title of Dreams Are Free was a suggestion from Henry Rollins, and the words to Little Man with a Gun in His Hand, a co-write between Dee Boone and Chuck Dukowski. Pretty much everything that they would expand upon further with Double Nickels has a precedent here. Often just a phrase, a riff, or a situation, but it's unmistakable nonetheless. On then with the final theme, the third theme, and that's just the music itself. Punk may have inspired them, but the Minutemen never allowed musical dogma or scene purity to tether them. Grounded in that 70s rock-schooled telepathy of Mike and Dee, and later on George, their presentation was strikingly egalitarian. Dee's guitar, all clean, sharp, biting treble, echoes of the Bakersfield Buck Owens country music that his dad used to play him as a kid. And at the other end of the spectrum, Mike's gurgling, throaty low-end bass, a switching melody for jazzy runs and detours. And George busying up that center ground, the space between Dee and Mike with his impossibly fast, intricate, weirdo drums. The first great outliers, I think, of the early American hardcore scene. Like Wire, the post-punks operating in plain sight, right in the thick of the punk scene. Stooges, Beefheart, Coltrane, Creedence, Bolan, Wire, Voidoids, Parliament, The Family Stone, The Who. They all played a role in the Minutemen's development, but it was that teenage bond, that shared musical education between Mike and Dee that was the bedrock. And it feels like the band's musical vocabulary was mapped out pretty comprehensively by the time of Buzz or Howl. Take Opener self-referenced, that funk influence is in there, but clashing wildly from stanza to stanza with wormy, squirmy Beefheart blues, echoes of Watt and Boone favourites, the pop group maybe, but with little islands of whispery, jazzy clarity peeking above the choppy waters. Similarly, I felt like a gringo, pogos, back and forth, funk to punk and back again, but with a witty lightness of touch enhanced by Dee's knowing borrow of a snatch of melody from the champ's Tequila during his guitar break. And in breaking free of hardcore's meaner, harder, faster straitjacket, there are moments of synchronicity here where links between on paper disparate peers bubble right up to the surface. Take Cut, when Boone's squiggly leads seg into the ringing, droning meat of it, Watt's barked vocals are accompanied by the percussive, piercing ching of string harmonics, and hey-ho, you're only a stone's throw from the serrated abrasion of Steve Albini's Big Black sound that was emerging at almost the exact same point in time. Seriously, try playing Cut back-to-back with Kerosene and report back. I mean, I hear it. Do you? And Little Man with a Gun in His Hand. You heard my version at the top of this video. That was the band's first recorded song to top the 3-minute mark. One of their greatest, I reckon, and the presence of it in a re-recorded form on double nickels, although never on any of the CD reissues, suggests that the Minutemen recognised it as such themselves. It's a perfectly poised EP. The 50-50 split between Spot's scrappy one-take production and Ethan James' unfussy clarity, the same aesthetic that he brought to double nickels. It positions them at an artistic crossroads. Behind them, the 15-20-minute albums, the length of some bands' EPs. Ahead of them, 80-plus minute double albums and experiments in Mersh at embracing the studio and what it could do for them. I've shown this piece before, but I'll leave the last word on Buzz or Howl to Steve Albini, who said this of it in the Melody Maker's Rebellious Jukebox feature in July 1994. The band that proved the point best, that being outstanding musicians didn't need to interfere with fully kicking ass. I could have named any of their records, which are all nearly perfect. To say that Minutemen influenced me and an entire population of others is such a gross understatement. It's like saying the Civil War had some effect on the slave trade. So yeah, 3 corn dogs from Pedro who basically invented post-hardcore, and by definition, most of what now passes for indie rock, which for me makes Buzz or Howl Into the Influence of Heat a pretty special record. Okay, there you go. Episode 6, Minutemen, Buzz or Howl Under the Influence of Heat. What do you think of this EP? And yeah, why not? What do you think of the Minutemen in general? Comments down under, please. I'll pitch in as appropriate. Just in case you're interested in my musical efforts, at the top of the video, I used a homemade telly with the brightest bridge pickup I could find. In this case, a Gretsch Hylatron, straight into the bright channel of an Ampeg J20, full treble, no pedals. That amp is basically a brown-faced deluxe clone, and it was the closest I could get to Dee's Fender Twin. I used a jazz bass copy into the normal channel of the same amp, and the drums are Georgie's. I pulled them out of the original track with a little digital trickery. But anyway, that's the video. Thanks very much for getting this far into it. Please think about liking and subscribing, particularly if you haven't done that before, because it really does help the channel. And with that, I will bid you farewell. I hope to see you back here again on the channel very soon. Bye for now.